Hello and welcome to the Georgia Postgame live show here on the Georgia Voice of College Football. I am your host, Matt Green. I appreciate everyone for tuning in and everyone who's tuning in live this week. Please like, share, and subscribe and all that good stuff. It helps us out with the channel. We're coming into you on a Friday night. Normally, I like to talk about all the games that just happened, and not just the one Georgia game. But we don't usually have a Friday night game. Friday night lights here, and wow, to quote the great Clark Griswold, "Holy shit, where's the Tylenol?" I mean, this game was just a roller coaster of emotions. Honestly, it was just an absolute insane game, and I can't believe Georgia came out on top, 44-42 in 8 overtimes. Jackson Johnson chiming in the chat. What's up, Bulldog Nation? I appreciate you tuning in, Jackson. I want to say Jackson Johnson. I think I saw your one of your tweets up on Feinbaum the other day. So you're making some noise. Go national, man. So good to see you. Appreciate you tuning in. But yeah, Georgia Tech, 44-42 final in 8 overtimes. Man, I almost don't even know where to start with this game. It was just an insane game, and one of them. I would say I was trying to rack my brain for a Georgia, a Kirby Smart win like this, and just in terms of just the improbability, like, maybe the Ohio State game in the Peach Bowl a couple years ago, in terms of just needing everything to happen. And Jackson, I appreciate you chiming in here. Let's get this Voice of College Football channel up to 2,000 subscriptions. That's what I want to see. Let's get this channel building and talking Georgia football like we do every week with you guys. But yeah, trying to rack my brain on just a game that was just so done, and Georgia just came back off the mat and won it. Like this, I was trying to rack my brain. As Georgia fans, we're used to the game where we dominated for 3.5 quarters and then it's taken away at the very end. Man, things are different now. Is this what it's like once you're a national championship program? I was hate watching USC and Ohio State as a kid, and they just find ways to win games. Are we that program now? We don't bring our best and we still find ways to win games. Man, this was just an incredible game. Like, there's no way to really talk about it, but that's what I'm here to do. Talk about it the best I can. So Georgia Tech started this game. The drive summary for Georgia Tech, like, that's what I have to start off with. Like, so Georgia Tech, to start the game, eight plays for 61 yards, got the field goal. 7 plays, 48 yards, Georgia got the 4th down stop. 10 plays for 79 yards, the missed field goal. The chip shot, like, the Georgia got bailed out there. 8 for 66 and a touchdown. 11 for 63 and a touchdown to lead 17-0 at halftime. They were just doing whatever they wanted. Georgia got the 1 3 and out to start the third quarter. And then Georgia Tech went on the 18-play, 90-yard drive and got the field goal that took over 10.5 minutes of the third quarter into the fourth quarter. And then the 6-play, 75-yard drive to go up 27-13 with 5 minutes and 37 seconds left in this game. Georgia's down 2 touchdowns with 5 minutes and 37 seconds, and they still find a way to win it. I feel like so much of the slow starts and the offensive struggles have been put on the offense, I should say. Obviously, offensive struggles are on the offense, but so many of the slow starts have been put on the offense, just like point blank. And obviously Mike Bobo, like Georgia fans love to do. This defense is getting the pass so week in and week out. This defense is lots of times the reason for the slow start, because you look at like what Georgia did last week against UMass, and that's just one game. But Carson Beck threw 4 touchdowns on the first 4 drives, but they were up 28-14. And that 4th drive was with like 30 seconds left in the half. Like, it was because the defense was getting run all over and not able to get off the field. And once again, that was a problem. Georgia Tech with 260 rushing yards in this one. They had 270 on Miami a couple weeks ago. And this game, Georgia Tech just did not approach this game at all how I maybe they've been keeping Haynes King healthy the last couple weeks, and they're like, I don't know. It's hard to say you're resting him when he's just being used as a bulldozer in the run game. But they've gone with Aaron Philo and Haynes King. Haynes King almost playing that like freshman Tim Tebow role, like occasionally throwing it, but basically just coming in to get tough yards on the ground. And this game was all Haynes King. We didn't even see Philo at all. And this is now the second time this season that Georgia has made a guy who's been fine. Like Haynes King has not really been particularly good this year, but he's been a decent player in his time in college. And Georgia made him look like the Heisman Trophy winner. And we did the same thing with Jalen Milroe back in September. At least Jalen Milroe's done it to a couple more other teams, but you've had the games where Milroe has 17 yards rushing and can't complete a pass downfield. And this guy looked like Lamar Jackson or Cam Newton against Georgia back in September. Haynes King on the day, 26 of 35 passing, 303 yards, 110 yards on the ground, and 5 total touchdowns. That's 2 through the air, 3 on the ground. Like this dude was a straight up workhorse. Like Haynes King just deserves every bit of credit that you can possibly give him for his performance in this game. And that's why I think the Ohio State game from a couple years ago in the Peach Bowl and then in the college ball semifinals, that was the closest game I felt like to this one. It felt a little different because obviously Ohio State's a lot better than Georgia Tech for one, but Georgia actually did score some, but they were down, was it 17-3 and then came back to make it 17-7 in the second quarter, and then they were down. Oh, shoot, I'm not looking at the Ohio State game in front of me, but they were down like 2 scores going into halftime, and then I don't know what it was, but essentially in that Ohio State game, Georgia needed every single play in order to get back in that game, and you point to like probably 5, 6, 7 different plays. You're like, well, if that one happens, we don't win the game. If that one happens, Georgia probably doesn't win. If that one happened, and you can go so many, the Brock Bowers stretching the first down, the Arian Smith touchdown, and it was almost like in that game also, Georgia didn't get that many stops. Like they've got some field goals, and that they were able to trade field goals for touchdowns and get back into the game. And that was kind of what happened here. Like I read you the drive chart. Like it was touchdown to end the second quarter, touchdown. They got the 1-3 and out early in the third quarter. Then it was field goal, then touchdown. And then you got the stop to get the ball back with Dan Jackson and the turnover. Like that's really the one play that this defense made was Dan Jackson's turnover. And obviously they got some pressure on King in the overtimes, but this performance was it was unlike anything I've seen in a long time. Like it's funny, I went to the Ohio State game, which is one of the best wins in the Kirby Smart era, if not the best, honestly. It's up there. But this game's in so many ways, for the first 3.5 quarters, and shoot, with 5 minutes left in the game, I'm trying to rack my brain for where is this in the worst losses of the Kirby Smart era, because not to get negative here, we can get negative since ultimately it ended positive. But I mean, the South Carolina loss back in 2019, which was the last home loss, now they got 31 in a row, which has tied the SEC record. I would hate it for that streak to end one game short of the SEC record for 31 straight home wins. So that last home loss, 2019 South Carolina, you still lost to Joe Burrow and LSU and everything, and you probably, if you get in the playoff, you're probably not beating that team. So it probably didn't really cost you anything. But I mean, if that SEC championship is the first loss of the season, maybe Georgia gets in there. So that South Carolina game and potentially cost you, at least that room for error to get into a college football playoff. And that's really the one kind of inexplicable loss of the Kirby Smart era. I mean, other than that until that Ole Miss game for the last 3-4 years, it's only been Alabama that's beaten Georgia. And obviously the cocktail party loss in 2020, like that's the one loss, right? That Kirby Smart has had to Florida in the last 7 tries. So for the first 3 quarters or so, I'm racking my brain that this this might be the worst loss of the Kirby Smart era. Just in terms of now you're a 3-loss team. You can obviously still win the SEC championship and get a top 4 seed, which speaks to the flaw of that format. But you have that 3rd loss, and then you lose that room for error in the SEC championship, and it would have just been massive. And we're having a completely different conversation right now if Georgia loses this game, and it's not good at all. And maybe we are talking about Mike Bobo and all that stuff, but the way this team was able to come back, like, because I read you Georgia Tech's drive summary for the first, 3.5 quarters of this game for Georgia, and so many Georgia games have been like this, and I think that's why the defense is really not getting enough blame when it comes to the Georgia struggles and slow starts, because the offense is just not getting any possessions this season. There have just been so many games this year where Georgia has the ball for three times in the first half, 4 times in the first half. In this game, after the 3-and-out, I will say the first time I really got worried in this game was the 3-and-out to start the second half, because until that point, like, Georgia's had slow starts all season. So it's like, yeah, maybe we get worried, but we've also kind of done this. So 17-0, we haven't done that. So that's not what we wanted, obviously. But once you start the second half, make it 17-7, and then or 17-6, I guess, because apparently Kirby's going to do this whole 2-point conversion thing. I don't know. Someone explained the analytics that. So I'll say this sidebar. Let me get back to where I was going to go, but sidebar. Apparently, the analytical explanation for going for it 17-6 to make it 17-8, and that would cut it to 9, is that then if Georgia Tech scores a touchdown on the next drive, you assure that it's just a 2-score game. So if you're down 9 and Tech scores a touchdown on the next drive, you're down 16. So it is still a 2-score game. I don't know. It still seems really weird to me, especially at 10 minutes left in the third quarter, to be chasing points. Like, to make it 17-7. Let's go. Like, I don't know. And then obviously that had implications. Like, when Georgia got the stop late with Dan Jackson, forced the fumble, Georgia would have the ball down 21-20, down 20 to 27-21, I should say, down 6 points, and a touchdown would win the game at that point. So a little questionable to go for it when he did, but luckily that didn't turn out to hurt Georgia. But that's the logic, I guess, and I don't know if I agree with it, but. After that 3-and-out to start the second half, Georgia's down 17-0. It goes 3-and-out. That's when I really started worried. Like, okay, if they go make this 20-0, 24-0, like, this thing could be over. And luckily, Georgia gets the 3-and-out right back. They're like 1 3-and-out of the entire game, and then they go. This is Georgia's next drives to start the third quarter. They go 6 for 51, touchdown, 13 for 75, touchdown, 8 for 75, touchdown, 5 for 32, touchdown. Like, they got the ball 4 times, and then there's the Hail Mary where they get the one play at the end. So they only had 4 possessions in the second half, and they made them count, and they scored 4 touchdowns. This offense, I feel like, has been more efficient than it gets credit for at times. And that's kind of, and that's another one of the things. It's just so many times the defense is just struggling to get off the field on third down. Like, I think in this game, what was it? Georgia Tech went 7 of 15 on third down in this one. I think the biggest mistake of this game, the only thing I would question Brent Key, because obviously they had a damn good game plan. Buster Faulkner just had this Georgia defense guessing at all times. When they scored the touchdown in the first overtime, that was the time for Tech to go for 2 and go for the win, as far as I'm concerned. Like, Georgia could not stop Haynes King in short yardage. You have one play from the 3-yard line to beat Georgia. You're 7 of 15 on third down. You've been in 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 the whole game, and you've just been picking it up. Like, that's the one place I question. Georgia Tech should have gone for the jugular there, and I did not feel good as a Georgia fan in the in the first overtime, once they scored that touchdown, I thought for sure. I think when you're not the better team, like I think Sam Pittman had the opportunity, or not Pittman, was it Napier? Napier had the opportunity against Tennessee when they scored late in that game. They should have gone for two. When you're not the better team, I think you go for two. You try to win now. Like you tell your team, like we can get 3 yards and win this game right now. Like if you would have told us that when they got off the bus, like I think Georgia Tech would take that. So, and especially the way you move the ball on the ground and Haynes King just doing whatever he wanted at times. I think Georgia Tech definitely should have gone for 2 there at the end. That's the one thing I'll question. But this Georgia offense and that 8 for 75-yard drive, like that was in like a minute 50, I think. Right there when they needed to, Georgia Tech went up. What was the score? Georgia Tech went up 27-13 with 5:37 left in the fourth quarter. And Georgia won this football game. Like I can't stress enough like how improbable this win was. I'm never looking at the ESPN when they do the win probability. Oh man, this one was all over the place. So let me pull up this win probability here. So let me see here. Oh, that's in overtime. So you go back, Georgia Tech sitting at about 97%. So when they scored 5 minutes left, they're up to 98.5% win probability with 5:37 to go in this game. Just absolutely insane. And then it just drops all the way down. What is it? With 34-27. Oh, that's in overtime. That Georgia, that it finally swings back to Georgia. But man, and then they had a chance right there with almost got in field goal range right there at the end of the game. But man, this game, this is why we do the instant reaction, to get the emotions of it, because man, I cannot believe Georgia came out on top in this game. So I think Carson Beck, I think a lot was being made of Carson Beck in this game, and the offense has obviously had its struggles. He had 0 points in the first half, and then started the first drive of the second half, still 0 points. So obviously the offense has been struggling. But as far as I'm concerned, Carson Beck is not the problem with this offense. Like Carson Beck brought his A game as far as I'm concerned. These receivers have to catch the football. Like there is just, I don't know what it is, but the drops almost seem contagious at times. But you've seen, man, this is the Alabama game, the Tennessee game, now this game. There's been a big drop on the first drive of the game. That's a first down. And those first 2 games, like the Alabama Arian Smith one, that could have been 50 yards. I think the Tennessee one was would have been like a 40-yard gain. This one to Arian Smith, I mean, it's just an easy third. What is it? 3rd and 3, pick up an easy 5, 6, 7 yards. Keep the drive going. Like the exponential effect that it has on the quarterback, these drops. Like I know that people want to just hate on Carson Beck every time he doesn't play well, and he had his struggles at times, but damn, when you're dropping the ball this much, this team is last in the SEC in rushing yards per game and first in the nation in dropped passes. In what scenario is that team playing for an SEC championship? Like Carson Beck, I'm as far as I'm concerned, Carson Beck is one of the quarterbacks that can win a national championship. Like Georgia would not be where they are if they did not have Carson Beck. In this game, Carson Beck, 28 of 43, 297 yards, 5 touchdowns, no picks. This dude was balling. And who knows what the offense, what happens in the first half if Dom Lovett doesn't have that drop, if Arian Smith doesn't have that drop. Like it's insane at times. And then Dominic Lovett obviously had the fumble that was so big. Like it seems like so many times this offense is stopping themselves more than the defense stopping them. And part of it is like encouraging because you're like, well, that we're stopping ourselves. That's something that's correctable. But when you do it for 12 weeks, that's just who you are. So you have to be better and you have to take care of the football. It was Carson Beck for a few weeks there. Now it's the fumbles. Nate Frazier may have gotten away with a fumble near the goal line in this one as well. And obviously he's had his problems with fumbles at times this season. But man, oh man, this Georgia offensive line just can't get a push against Georgia Tech. Like, I don't know what Georgia's problem is on the offensive line. Like, this team, they can't run the football. They ended up with 100 yards in this one, but your leading rusher, Nate Frazier, 11 for 50. Like, Arian Smith had the 30-yard carry. That definitely made the excuse me. Let me get a swig of water real quick. Hold on one second. All right. This is the instant reaction show. I may have lost my voice. I may have yelled at times during this game. But yeah, 26 for 108 on the ground. And you take that Arian Smith one out, which obviously it's part of the running it's part of the rushing production for sure. But it's 25 for 78. If you take that out, like that played a huge part. Like, this, with the level of recruits that this Georgia team brings in on the offensive line, like, I'm just baffled. I'm not baffled in week 12 because it's the exact team we've seen all year, but it is baffling that Georgia can't, bully Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech was the one doing the bullying. And that just blows my mind that Georgia Tech bullied Georgia in this game, and they were able to, and Georgia was still able to somehow find a way to win this game. Time of possession in this game, speaking of Georgia Tech just bullying Georgia Tech ran 84 plays, had the ball for just over 37 minutes. Georgia only had the ball for 69 plays and less than 23 minutes of time of possession. Like, this is the game plan, like, that it takes to beat Georgia. And Georgia Tech ran it to damn near perfection. Like, Kentucky ran it to perfection, but just didn't have an offense with a pulse. Like, they controlled the clock and they kept Georgia's offense off the field. They only could score field goals. Like, Georgia Tech was getting touchdowns. Like, it's incredible to me that Georgia was able to pull this game out with the way that Georgia Tech just physically kind of dominated the line of scrimmage in this game. Like, that's just not a winning formula when you're Georgia, and somehow they find a win this game. Here's one thing I want to talk about. Let's talk about overtime in college football. Can we talk about that for a second? Someone can chime in the chat and tell me what they think about the overtime rules. But I thought college overtime was almost perfect in the past. The only thing I would change with college overtime in terms of starting on the 25-yard line, I would make it start on the 50-yard line. Keep it exactly what the classic rules always were. Start at the 50, because there's no reason to be able to get a field goal, to get a scoring opportunity when your offense didn't move the ball. Like, you get a 3 and out and you get to kick, what is that, a 42-yard field goal? Like, 42-yard field goal for not moving the ball at all? I don't like that part of it. But in general, I love college football's overtime. Starting at the 25, that LSU Texas A&M game a couple years ago that went to the 7-8 overtimes, one of the greatest things I've ever watched. Like, the first year they had college overtime, that great Georgia Auburn game, like 96 or 97, was that 96 with Mike Bobo? That was one of the most incredible Georgia games of all time. So the powers that be that watched LSU Texas A&M, I don't know what year that was, 2021 or so. The powers that be that watched that game were like, nah, we can't have this again. We're just not speaking the same language, because that was an incredible game. And it also doesn't happen very often. I don't routinely see 7 overtime games. I don't understand the the reaction, I guess, that came, player safety, whatever. It doesn't happen that often. So the first overtime is regular. You kick the extra point. Second overtime, now you have to go for 2 after you score a touchdown. It used to be the case in the third overtime. And then you just have this 2-point conversion contest. And we went to 8 overtimes doing this. What was this? I know I'm not new to college football. I know this is how they've been doing it for a few years now. But does anyone like this? Like, you get one play, like, this is not football. The idea of losing a game on a 2-point conversion contest just makes me sick. Like, if I'm a Georgia Tech fan, like I said, if I'm a Georgia Tech fan, I would have gone for 2 in the first overtime before you had to try to win the game right then and there. But if I'm Georgia Tech and I play the way I played and we just lost because of a 2-point conversion contest that we did 8 overtimes. That means we did it 6 times. Is my math right there? 6 times, and what did they convert? So I don't even know how it's 2-point means you did get it or didn't get it. I don't know. It's confusing. I'd have to look at exactly how it went down. But both teams out of the 6 converted like 2 of them, 3 of them. And it's not an exciting overtime to watch. They got to do something about this overtime. It's just penalty kicks. I know it's essentially penalty kicks, and soccer fans are kind of torn on how they feel about penalty kicks. The drama is great, but it's like, is this how we're going to decide who the better team is? I don't know if you have a better option in soccer but football has a much more structured setting. My idea, if we're going to keep doing this, we had to have a change of some sort. You should do 4 plays from the 10-yard line. Like, you get 4 downs. Like, that's football, at least. Like, this just 1 play from the 3, just a little 2-point conversion contest, a little penalty kick shootout. I'm just not here for it. That's a terrible way to decide a game. Man, if you want to give someone just, a heart attack, then yeah, that's the way to go. If that's what you're going for, keep it up, because it is absolutely gut-wrenching sitting through the 2-point conversion contest. Like, when you get it in the first time around, that's when you finally feel a little good, because you're like, okay, so if they don't get this, we win, obviously. But if they do get this, we at least know we're going to get to go again. They get it, and then if they get it again, we get to go. You're just finally the stress is off. But if you do not get it the first round, or first the top of overtime, top and bottom, like innings, I guess is the best way to describe it. If you do not get it in the top, and you're just sitting here like, they get a 2-point conversion and we lose. Oh, we're going to lose to Georgia Tech. Oh, man, what is happening here? To quote Larry Munson, I gave up. You did too. But actually, I will say I didn't give up. I was in a household, not to throw my brother under the bus here. Shout out to Jake. Appreciate you tuning in. I know he gave up. I could sense the body language. 5:37, like I said, down 2 touchdowns. I think he'd given up. I did not give up just yet, because, call me crazy, but I believe in Carson Beck, and this offense. They moved the ball down the field on Georgia Tech in the second half, and I felt like when Georgia's in this desperation, a play has to be made. Carson Beck has come through time and time again. Like, that Alabama game, like, speaking of like the Ohio State game, the 2022 Ohio State game, this was almost the Alabama game was almost the closest thing you could compare to this, because there was about 5, 6, 7 different times in that Alabama game back in September where it was, okay, it's 4th down here, mid-3rd quarter. If we don't get this, game's probably over. Okay, we converted it. All right. If we don't get a stop here, game's probably over. okay, we got to stop. And it just kept going that way. If we don't pick up this fourth down, it's over. Georgia picks up another fourth down. It was Carson Beck. He obviously had the awful first half. The second quarter of that Alabama game was it the second quarter? Was one of the worst performances I've seen from Carson Beck. But in that second half, to bring Georgia back, he made every single clutch play he had to make. And that's what it was tonight. It was do or die situation. Carson Beck kept coming through. And even with the drops still happened. That's the crazy part is against Tennessee, Georgia's offense has started to take a step forward. It's like you started to feel better. You still had the drops in the Tennessee game. So it's like they haven't even had a clean performance yet that you can be like, okay, they're not going to drop passes now. We've kind of moved past that. Even the games that the offense has played well, and even when the offense is kind of playing well, you still have these drops mixed in. And it's just, I think it's bitten Georgia at times, and I wouldn't be surprised if it bites them again. But Carson Beck, I think just made the clutch plays when they had to happen. And I think not enough can be said about Carson Beck's performance in this game. And for that matter, not enough can be said about Mike Bobo's performance in this game. Like, I know the storylines of Buster Faulkner and him being a guy under Todd Monken and like a protege of Monken, and obviously under Kirby and everything. And Mike Bobo is just the most hated man in Athens at times. But man, there are so many great play calls. Just what did they show on the screen at one point in this game that Georgia averages like 8 yards of 8 yards a play when they call screen passes? Georgia fans hate screen passes. 8 yards a catch on screen passes is pretty damn good. And then you see the play late, the touchdown to London Humphreys that's set up by that screenplay action. And then you go over the top, and Carson Beck just put a perfect ball right where it needed to be. And he trusted his receiver to be in the right spot. And I'm not sure you always should trust these receivers to be in the right spot because they've let him down at times. But Carson Beck is just, I don't think enough can be said about his performance and keeping Georgia alive in this game. Like, I'm a big Carson Beck fan. I don't know if you've noticed, and I'm not. It's not even like I was. There's any particular reason. Like, Carson Beck is a good quarterback, and you look at the other contenders in college football right now, and Georgia's got a good enough quarterback to win the national championship, as far as I'm concerned. Do they have a good enough defense to win the national championship? I don't know. Do they have good enough receivers to win the national championship? I don't know. Do they have enough running backs to win the national championship? I don't know. But they have the quarterback. The quarterback is not the problem on this team, as far as I'm concerned. And I just read you the touchdown, the drives in the second half after the 3 and out. It was 6 for 51, a touchdown, 13 for 75, a touchdown, 8 for 75, a touchdown, 5 for 32, a touchdown. And then after the Hail Mary, then you go to overtime, it's 4 for 25, a touchdown, 1 for 25, touchdown. Like, this Georgia offense scored a touchdown 6 consecutive times they had the ball, starting from about 13 minutes left in the third quarter. Like, you can't do that if you're not a good offense and a good quarterback. So it would be nice to do it when you're not down 17-0. The slow starts with this team, you have to feel like are going to catch up to them at some point. Like that's, so let me transition to I guess my final, like, just thoughts about this game. My final takeaways. Let me set up my fancy banner here. Final takeaways, as you see on the screen there. My final takeaways is that this sucked, but man, would losing have sucked a lot more. Like, I kind of got into it earlier of just the repercussions of this loss and it being maybe the worst loss of the Kirby Smart era. Like, a lot of leeway has been given to this Georgia football team for losing 2 games, the toughest schedule in the country. And it was the toughest schedule in all of college football. This was not supposed to be one of those games. And also, I felt like the Friday night thing, I felt like that was going to be an advantage for Georgia because like, as most of you know, being loyal Georgia fans, Georgia has not lost in Bobby Dodd since 1999. Georgia doesn't lose in Bobby Dodd Stadium. And I think it's something to do with it's a big game atmosphere every time because Georgia is Georgia Tech's Super Bowl. Like, just point blank, not even trying to hate on Georgia Tech. This is their Super Bowl. And when it's in Bobby Dodd, it's a big game, and Georgia's comes, all business, and they take care of business. It's the times when it's in Athens, it's a sleepy noon game, and I know I'm trying to keep up with Ohio State, Michigan, and Clemson, South Carolina on other channels. And even I'm like, maybe the players are like, what's going on in Ohio State, Michigan? Have you guys, they don't seem focused. It seems like Georgia doesn't come out with the same energy in some of these noon games against Georgia Tech. And obviously we know about the talent discrepancy. A lot of the guys at Georgia Tech don't have a scholarship offer from Georgia, at least traditionally. Brent Key's stepping things up. But this one being on a Friday night, the crowd, you could hear early in this game, the crowd was bringing the energy, but damn, 17-0, that'll take them out of it real quick. I don't care who you are. Georgia fans, much maligned about how much noise they make or don't make. You go out 17-0, that takes the crowd out of a game. So the fact that Georgia was able to pull this out, I think I had some nearly famous last words going into this game. And I guess I wasn't speaking truly definitively, although I did predict Georgia to cover the spread. And man, did they not cover a 20-point spread. My nearly famous last words were only the underachieving Georgia teams are the ones that lose to Georgia Tech. It was the 2008 team that's preseason number 1, underachieved. And I mean, it was a close loss to Tech. It was like 38-35, I want to say. 2014, Georgia with Hudson Mason as quarterback. Like, that team lost 3 different games, including Georgia, where they were double-digit favorite. It was an underachieving team. Then 2016, year one of Kirby Smart, maybe not underachieving, but they weren't a very good team. Didn't achieve much. And I started to say, like, this team's in the SEC championship. So yeah, we're a good team, right? We're a good team. We have to be. We're in the SEC championship. But it has underachieved at time, or maybe it hasn't underachieved. Maybe this team just isn't quite as good as we thought they were. And maybe this is exactly how they should have achieved. But 12 weeks of data, doesn't make them look very dominant at any point this year. So you could have added this 2024 team to that list of teams that underachieved. And if they lost to Tech, that definitely would have gone a long way in saying that, and especially maybe lose the SEC championship and miss out on the college football playoff. Oh yeah, there'd be a lot of underachieving talk too if that were the case. So, like I said, this sucked, but man, oh man, could it have sucked a lot worse. My other biggest takeaway, takeaway number 2, like I said before, Carson Beck is not the problem, and quite frankly, neither is Mike Bobo. This offensive line, they protected Beck fairly well. Tech, I think Georgia Tech was last in the ACC in sacks coming into this game, and I want to say last or second to last in interceptions. So not the best pass defense to begin with, and so or pass rush. So Georgia only did give up 2 sacks in this one, but in general, Beck wasn't under a lot of pressure. But in terms of just the running game, this offensive line has to be better. We know about the injuries at running back. It was good to see Roderick Robinson back in this one, but there's a lot of problems. Running game, receiver drops. Carson Beck is not the problem, folks. And like I said, this is the second time this season that Georgia has made a opposing quarterback who did not look like at any other time this year look like the Heisman Trophy winner. Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart looked pretty damn good against this too, but Jalen Milroe, now Haynes King. This Georgia defense just has to be better. They have to get off the field on third down and just give this offense more time. Like, they have to give this offense more possessions. Man, it was this defense now, 100. I think they were giving up 122 rushing yards a game coming into this game. That's the most in the Kirby Smart era, excuse me. And after a 260 spot against UMass, and now, or was it 225 against UMass? Now 260 to Georgia Tech. Man, this rushing numbers got even worse. This has been the worst run D of Kirby Smart's tenure, and I mean the secondary hasn't been great at times either. So the fact that we're sitting here at a 10-2 season, SEC championship on the docket next week versus Texas or Texas A&M, and we still don't even know if this team is good, just kind of baffles my mind. So it brings me to my other one of my other takeaways. Is it time to have a serious conversation about the SEC not being very good this year? I'm not sure. Like, I know Texas is sitting over there at 10-1. I don't know how good Texas is. Georgia's best 2 wins of the season are over the other 2 SEC teams that are going to be in the college football playoff or projected to be in the college football playoff. And I don't know how good either of those teams are. Tennessee's 10-1 has played a lot of down teams, and their offense is maybe bottom 5, bottom half of the SEC. I don't know how good Tennessee is. Great defense, can run the ball. They have an identity. They've had several losable games to bad teams, and I know Tennessee fans that are worried about Vanderbilt next week. Shout out Chase Thomas and the Chase Thomas podcast. He's not feeling good about the trip to Vanderbilt. What is it? 21st Bank Stadium or something? I don't know. It's Vanderbilt Stadium. They're going to Nashville. Tennessee's going to have is going to have probably more fans there than Vanderbilt, but I don't know. They're not a big point spread favorite. Something crazy could happen. Texas has beaten, like I said, I think on the podcast last week, Texas so far has beaten the 10th, and I'm going to say this if they're in the SEC championship, they've beaten the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 15th, and 16th ranked teams in the SEC standings right now. And then they played the number 2 team, Georgia, and lost and got kind of dominated on their own field. And they're going to play Texas A&M, who's number 3 in the standings next week. And I still, through 11 games, I don't know how good Texas is. So I feel like we might need to have the conversation that the SEC is legitimately down. Alabama's lost 3 games. Ole Miss looked like the best team in the damn conference 3 weeks ago. They have 3 losses. South Carolina is like the hottest team in the whole conference. They have 3 losses. South Carolina could make a push for the playoff. Who knows with a win over Clemson tomorrow. So, or today, if you're watching this on Saturday morning. So yeah, I think it might be a time to have a serious conversation about the SEC and how good it is. Looks like they might only get 3 teams in. Maybe A&M sneaks in there somehow and they win a 4th one. I guess Georgia deserves to still go to the playoff if they win or after winning this game, if they lose the SEC championship. But I don't know. This is why I've kind of stayed out of the college football playoff ranking conversation when it comes to Georgia. Like, there's a lot of Georgia fans that have gotten worked up about where Georgia is in terms of Miami and Notre Dame and some of these one-loss teams, Penn State. And I'm just like, I don't know, guys. There's weeks where we don't look good at all. So let's just try to like keep quiet and take care of business and hopefully win the SEC and get that top 4 seed. I would assume Georgia gets the 2 seed if they have to get the 2 seed if they win this game. So man, this is this game. Wow, that's all I got to say. It obviously Georgia still had a clear path to the college football playoff if they lose this game, but you're not feeling good at all about the potential to beat anybody. And I don't know if you're feeling good now about the potential to beat anybody. Georgia having to 27-27 going into regulation at the end of regulation against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Just unbelievable, really. It's here's the last thing I'll leave you on. So at the end of the day, this was a great win for the Bulldogs in terms of just snatching victory out of the hands of defeat. Is that the expression? How do we feel about the post-game handshake with Brent Key and Kirby Smart? Like, that was like a solid, like, 2-minute embrace. I think Brent Key was legit crying, and that Kirby Smart was there to console Brent Key. And I don't know about you guys, that didn't look like clean old fashioned hate to me. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy who's toxic masculinity over here, poo-pooing sportsmanship. That didn't feel like clean old fashioned hate. That felt like some little brother, big brother, little brother stuff. That's for sure. But yeah, just the fact that they just kind of embraced the way they did. Brent Key, I think, has been very vocal that he in his the way he despises Georgia, right? He is Georgia Tech through and through. And it's refreshing, right? Like, I think Georgia, and I'm guilty of it for sure. I think a lot of Georgia fans disrespect Georgia Tech. There's a lot of one-sided games, one-sided seasons, one-sided recruiting battles in this state. And Georgia Tech brought it. Georgia Tech, I thought, was the better team for the better part of 4 quarters. And somehow Georgia was the one that ended up victorious in this game. So I think the Super Bowl thing is just like a common like rivalry, like jab, like, oh, we're your guys' Super Bowl, yada yada. Like, oh, thanks for so I don't know. You see, Tennessee made a coffee table book about a regular season win over Alabama. Like, there's legitimate talk there at times. But Georgia, for better or worse, Georgia is Georgia Tech's Super Bowl, and they damn near won their Super Bowl, and it would have been an 8-win season for Georgia Tech. Like, this massive like building block. Like, they're already, I think they have a top 20 recruiting class this year. Like, they're making the steps, taking the steps that they need to with this program. Like, they lost some games they could have won. Like, after beating Florida State, and obviously Florida State ended up being a terrible team, but there was a path for them to contend in the ACC this year, other than the fact that I think they had the most difficult schedule in the ACC. But there was a path for them, and this was a really good team this year. 8-4. Like, you can't say enough about how good Georgia Tech looked in this game. Like, obviously, everyone looks better after they give you a tough game. So, you're going to respect them more. Like, this team did get dominated at Virginia Tech, got beat handedly by Notre Dame, lost at Syracuse, lost at Louisville. I think the Louisville game was a little closer than the score because Louisville had that blocked field goal they returned for a touchdown. But, I mean, Georgia Tech, there's no moral victories, but you have to feel good about what Brent Key is building. And in terms of just, he's an O-line guy. That's his background, and Georgia Tech dominated up front. So I think Georgia Tech's got to be proud of what they did in this game versus Georgia. But it was Georgia found a way to win in the end. So give all the credit, not all the credit, because obviously it's a team game, but man, Carson Beck, this was a gutsy performance by Carson Beck, and in a ways a legacy game, I think, for Carson Beck. Like, I think he really, the way Carson Beck like put this team like on his back at times in this game, like, I was just really impressed. And you've seen the last few weeks, like, obviously this guy's not the most athletic player, but you've seen in recent weeks, like, he knows what is needed, and this team needs a run game, and at times he is doing his part in the run game. So it's not necessarily the production that he's bringing in the running game as much as it is just like the character and the gritting and the toughness that it brings to the team, and the tone it sets that your quarterback is trying to get those physical yards. So we saw the Tennessee, you saw the power, the off tackle, just direct QB run, like, we looking like Tim Tebow over here. Like, I've never seen Georgia run that play. So and then you saw in the overtime the 2-point play that didn't work, where they tried to have Carson Beck run it. But he's putting his body on the line for this team, and not enough can be said about Carson Beck. A lot of interceptions, obviously, in the first part of this season, but now this is a third straight game without an interception. He's thrown 11 touchdowns and no picks in the last 3 games. Hats off to Carson Beck. This Georgia team kept their college football playoff berth alive. I think even with a loss in the SEC championship, I think this team is still in. That remains to be seen. But I think for the most part they're good. And man, it was because of this miraculous victory they pulled off against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. So I guess in the same way of Kirby Smart being there to console Brent Key, I'm not displaying the clean old fashioned hate either. I'm giving a lot of love to the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets because it felt like they were the better team in this game. I've said it multiple times. Over 300 yards passing, 260 yards rushing, over 500 yards of offense, and somehow Georgia finds a way to win it. So I appreciate everyone that tuned in to this live show. Instant reaction. It was a good one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate everyone who's listening. And until next time, go Dogs.